we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time listening, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, wherever you're watching, please follow along with the podcast, share it with your friends, like it, give us a good rating, do all that fun stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you know when the next video is going to come out. If you haven't ever watched on YouTube, go check it out. And you know, if you're ever just hanging out, doing your thing, we're available on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. If you ever wanted to donate to the podcast, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. Also, you can reach out to the podcast or check us out on our Instagram or our Twitter at the Bigmark Pod or at the Bigmark Podcast. Feel free to DM us there or let us know a topic or anything. Hit us up. And again, we want to grow the Bigmark Podcast community. So if you tell a friend, all you have to do is tell one friend and we can double the podcast overnight. So again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for taking the time. Welcome to the show. I'm excited about about today's episode because I was thinking about doing it and prepping for it and doing all that stuff and getting really excited because when this is being filmed right now, so this is January 31st, 2023. Happy birthday, B-Rye. Shout out. I'm getting ready for a wicked weekend up on Lake Nipissing in Ontario. So anyone who is unfamiliar with the geography of Ontario or just has never been to Nipissing, it is a fairly, well, shout out to my family up north, but it's a fairly up north lake. I mean, it's not like as north as you can get. I'll get to you all in a minute, everybody in Red Lake. Shout out. I'll get to y'all. But it's pretty northern, at least from Hamilton, Ontario. And driving up is going to be awesome on Friday. And we're going to go ice fishing. And that's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to talking about it. Hey, hell, who knows? I might even do a fucking whole podcast on it. But I'm dipping my toes in, so to speak, with today's episode. I'm really looking forward to it because it's a part of me. I don't know. It's an interesting aspect of my life that, so like I said, shout out Red Lake, Ontario. Anyone who doesn't know, Red Lake, Ontario, 3 hours north of Kenora, which is 5 hours north of Thunder Bay, and which is 21 hours north of Hamilton. So you could basically drive to Florida in the time it takes to drive to Red Lake, Ontario, which is where my mom grew up and where she was born. And I have family up there still. And a lot of my family spend time there. And I spend time there at least once a year. There's a couple years I think we did like a winter trip too. But every year I went to this little town in Northwest Ontario. It's like, I think like 3,000 people there now. And yeah, my family's up there. Shout out everybody. Ingrid, Eric, Antoniola, Uncle Rod, the whole crew, Trev, Oscar, Paige, everybody. How's everyone doing? Animalia of all types. It's a pleasure of my life for sure to have been able to have that in my life, and where I was able to go at least once a year for a couple weeks and spend some time in a fairly rural setting. And don't get me wrong, you know, we had lots of fun and going to the beach and swimming in the lake and just having like, that kind of good times. But we also had opportunities to go fishing a lot, lots and lots of fishing. I was really, really fortunate for that. In that basically anyone we knew up in Red Lake either had a boat or was interested in some type of fishing and, went out on a lot of trips. And, it's kind of one of those things where you don't really know you're kind of gaining this skill until you get to use it later in life. So unfortunately, when I was 16, sports was kind of completely dominating my life at the time. And I stopped going to Red Lake every year, and it really fucking sucked, and I missed it, and I still haven't been back. So it's been quite a long fucking time, and it's a shame. And again, shout out my boy B-Rye. We're going to make a plan. We're going to make a trip to go up there, hopefully very soon, because it's a shame that I haven't been up there, and it's beautiful, and there's pristine lakes and unbelievable, like outdoor activities, which is awesome. So anyway, since I stopped going up there, I really didn't, use said skills that I learned. And don't get me wrong, it was like 2 weeks, and maybe maybe every once in a while, me and my pops would go fishing somewhere, but I didn't really get those skills go again until I met my buddy B-Rye, who is an avid fisherman. He's going to be mentioned a lot during this episode, of course, not only because the trip's coming up, but because he's like for sure my biggest link to that kind of outdoorsy type activity in my life at the time. So at this point, when we first met, which is in university, we went and we played football together at University of Western Ontario. Go Stangs, go! Shout out Beefs, shout out everybody, shout out O-line, potluck, which me and B-Rye had. We're starting to kindle the fire in different parts of Norway. We're adding the kveik, which is also known as yeast in other parts of Norway. But let's not go on a tangent. We're fucking stoking the fire here on keeping this tradition going, because again, not to get too tangential, but every AFC NFC playoff games, like every year that happens, every Sunday, me and the boys on the team used to have the O-line potluck, and we're getting her back going again. Well, I hope they're still doing it at with the active squadron, but we might get some vets together. So any of you vets out there that are listening, anybody who's played together, any Stangs out there that want to keep it going, I guess O-line or not, we'll let this one slide this time. But nah, we want to get things going. We want to keep tradition alive, and again, I think it's important to do that. And tangent over. So when B-Rye and I met, through all that, we started going fishing, and because we were in school for most of the year, and it is fucking winter, especially in London, Ontario, where it's not too far from my buddy B-Rye's hometown, Chatham, Ontario, which right around there is Lake St. Clair, Lake Erie, really good ice fishing spots. So that's when I first started getting into ice fishing, and got to finally kind of use a little bit of those skills again. But the thing was when I was in Red Lake, when I was fishing, it was obviously in the summer, and we were trolling all the time. So in a moving boat with your line in the water, and it's moving, and then the fish comes and grabs it. So a pretty effective way of fishing, because it makes your lure look really realistic. It's not just like plops in from the sky and then just like, goes around in a circle, basically, depending on your lure. Anyway, the reason I bring these two things up is that as much as I learned one skill versus the other, sometimes they don't always cross. But that's the coolest thing about, the outdoor life, is that you have this whole world that is open to you to have and learn and hone and take part in these skills that it's like cross training. It's just like sports, right? The more you get into sports, and there's a reason why they call it the fucking sportsman show, and it's not a bunch of like guys kicking around soccer balls and shooting hoops. It's dudes outdoors sporting, shooting animals for sport, catching fish for sport, like sport fishing. All that is this sport prefix that is attached to all these things, because it has that essence of sport where every little avenue you're going, whether you're fishing, whether you're hunting, whatever you're hunting or fishing for, all those different, dichotomies, whatever, the way it shakes out has different skills and then transferable skills between each thing. And there's so much more to hunting and fishing than just like killing animals, right? And I think that's the problem, right? Is that a lot of people think, oh, you like to hunt, you like to fish, you are into like killing animals. And I think that that is unfortunately true in the sense that, yes, at the end of hunting and fishing, unless you're catch and release or doing some kind of like humane trapping, I don't know what else. I guess you could like shoot a deer with a paintball gun and it just runs away and you could be like, I don't know. I guess there's like humane where you don't kill the animal hunting. Like just like netting something, like just like grabbing it like Steve Irwin. I don't know. Anyway, yes, there's death involved. There's a weird thing, but it's also like tapping into this really primal, essentially like, evolutionary wise, still a big part of us. And it's tapping into that because like, since we've had refrigeration and agriculture, even you can go far back as that, but basically since we didn't necessarily have to hunt for all of our food, slowly but surely the population that actually does the killing slowly dwindled down to like farmers and, whatever, butchers and stuff, and the people who are actually like processing the meat packers or whatever you call them. It's slowly dwindled down to basically those are the people that handle all the death and the fucking chopping up bods and like doling it out. And then we just go to the store and grab our meat that's nicely packaged, clean, relatively speaking, has very little semblance of actually ever being like the alive animal that it once was. And I think that huge disconnect is what really puts us in this weird perspective against hunting and fishing. I think is that we've lost that experience, and then because we don't know about it and it's unknown, we cast aspersions, right? And we go, oh, we deconstruct it so much down to its essence that we go, oh, you're just killing animals. But the bigger picture is, without some of these hunters doing their thing, you're basically talking about population control in a lot of these species for hunting, right? Fishing, maybe there's certain invasive species for sure. But like hunting, it actually helps the environment. It helps, like, there's a natural culling, as they call it, of these animals where they're taking them out where, if all of a sudden we truly completely stopped hunting, all of a sudden we'd have all these extra deer, we'd have all these extra animals that are out there, and the predators that eat them could never keep up. And then you have all this huge population control issue that like they're eating up all the vegetation or like whatever it might be. And another thing too is that whole idea of like just going to the grocery store and being so disconnected from the food you eat, like maybe there's something like not wrong with that, but maybe we're missing out with actually going and like killing a fucking deer, butchering it yourself, or at least like having a major part in like the processing of the meat, seeing it, getting your like experiencing that whole thing. It becomes a little bit more of this kind of holistic thing, right? And I think that, again, evolutionary wise, or even like, not too far back in human history, we had to do this. We had to go and hunt, and maybe it didn't happen all the time, but when it did happen, you took pride in it and you respected the animal. And that's the other thing, is that people think it's like this major disrespect, right? Like even just like capturing an animal. So I was up at B-Rise place this weekend. He's got a little bush out back, and we were like looking out how you actually like bring animals in. And a really cool thing that we talked about, and this is from the Steve Ranella podcast, Meat Eater, which is a phenomenal podcast, also a very good show. And I think an excellent resource, especially for people who are starting to kind of like get more into this or trying to understand, how hunting works, or, or just like the other parts of like conservatorship or whatever you call it, conservationship. I don't know what it is. Again, I'm one of these laymen that benefit from this show. But one of the cool things that Steve Ranella talked about is that, you know, the idea is like, oh, I want to hunt deer. So in this bush that BRI has, it's in Leamington, Ontario, rural area where there's lots of farmland, but then there's these like little, like, you know, few acre bushes, trees, shrubberies that crop up, which attracts animals because it's a place to hide, food, what have you. So you have to kind of like bait the area to encourage more deer to come in and encourage them to stay as well, right? Because usually you're like hanging out in a tree, in like a tree stand, or you're like camouflaged somehow, and you're going to try and blast one of these things. So when you're encouraging them to come in, you think in your head, oh, I need to bait for a deer. I need to put out the bait that a deer will eat, and the deer will come, and then I'll see the deer. But the problem is, unless the rest of that kind of ecosystem makes sense to the deer too, like these things are animals in the wild. Even, you know, no, I won't say it. I was going to say people in the wild too, but no. Animals in the wild are so much more in tune with their environment than we as humans, right? We're so distracted by so many different things, let alone our own social structure. We've lost a lot of, which I think we probably still have latent somewhere in our bodies, but we've kind of fallen out of tune with nature in that sense. But animals, obviously in the wild, living in the wild, born and dying out there, are so much more in tune with that environment than we could ever be. And when a deer's walking in this bush and noticing there's not much else that should naturally be in this environment, it's going to get skittish. It's probably going to take off at the first little twig it hears. Snap of a twig. The first thing it hears, it's going to bolt. The idea is you start at the base kind of level of the ecosystem and you work your way up. So if you eventually want to get deer, you have to start with bees, right? So when you start with bees and you cultivate some bees and put a hive out or encourage an area where bees are going to want to come, flowers, whatever the fuck, the bees will start to come. Then the birds will start to come to eat the bees. And then other predators will come to eat the birds. And then other predators will come to eat those, you know, predators that are eating the birds. And you have this ecosystem that builds, and there's all these different other things that come from that, and the food that's required to sustain these other animals and these other prey animals. It starts to build even in this small, 5-acre wood kind of thing, right? And that slowly will become essentially like a sanctuary, and these animals will be encouraged to come and check this place out. And BRI is going to shoot one probably of them. And if there's 20, I don't know how many that could ever live in this thing. But if there's, however thousands of deer that exist in the area, if there's a couple in this wood, he's not going to shoot all of them. He can't shoot all of them. And he shouldn't, because it's wasteful, but he's going to shoot enough that it's going to be enough for him to like eat. And, you don't really want to like just, you want to have fresh meat too, right? In a sense. So you don't want to just be constantly stacking meat. I digress. But that is that whole other part where you're actually encouraging an ecosystem and you're creating an environment, not taking away so much. You've added so much more to the environment and the ecosystem, only to remove something and take something out and end a life. That probably, this is the other thing about hunting specifically, when you kill an animal, hopefully you're shooting it with some type of weapon, whether it's a bow and arrow, crossbow, a rifle. If you hit the animal in the right spot, where you were planning to, if you've practiced with that weapon and you know what you're doing, you're gonna kill that animal in the most humane, easiest, less pain. Like, there's not going to be any pain if you do it right for the animal. They're going to die instantly. You're going to shoot them in the heart. You're going to shoot them in the lungs. You're going to shoot them in an area that completely kills them, or at least within seconds. Most likely naturally speaking, if an animal is going to die of natural causes, those natural causes are just starving to death eventually, just getting too old that you can't take care of yourself if you're lucky to make it there. And if you aren't, you've been eaten alive by some other animal, like a bobcat if you're a deer, or God knows what else for other animals. So, of course, these are all the thoughts that come up. And you know, fishing too. Fishing's a weird thing, right? Like I grew up fishing, it never bothered me. Not that hunting bothers me, but there's something about it. And again, my buddy B-Rai can attest to the fact that he's trying to get me out. And it's not that I don't want to. I'm of course hesitant, and mainly because I feel, as much as all those things I just said, I feel that once I actually get to the moment where I kill the animal, I'll be overwhelmed by that feeling, in the sense that there's a thing called buck fever. I don't know if it's necessarily before, during, or after you killing the animal, but there's a feeling, and from what I gather, this is an adrenaline rush, and that adrenaline rush, you know, shakes and all this stuff, and there's all these feelings and interesting kind of chemicals and hormones that are released in the body. And I believe like weird, like oxytocin and like other strange like chemicals that you maybe wouldn't expect. Again, maybe I should have looked into this a little bit more, but buck fever, check it out. And you're like shaking all this stuff. And I feel like that feeling again is like, it's not guilt, it's not regret, but it could be perceived as such. Because one time, me and my boys, including B-Rai and our other buddy Paulie, shout out Paulie, we're shooting guns out in his back 40. And just like shooting skeet, like just clay pigeons. Tons of fun, loved it. I loved the target practice, tons of fun. But there happened to be an errant squirrel in the area, which there's tons, and they're pests, and they fuck with my buddy Paulie's shit. So he was like, go ahead, shoot one. So I fucking lined one up and I shot it, and I happened to like hit it in the head, and like I like split its wig. I like peeled its fucking head back, which is greasy. And it didn't make me feel any good, but did I not feel good because it was a senseless kill? It meant nothing. I didn't eat it. It was just fucking chilling. But if I end up killing like a deer and I got to go look at it in its soulful little eyes and be like, oh my God, I've plucked this thing off the earth for no other reason than that I want to eat it, which I could easily just go to the store and eat a cow or a chicken that's already been killed, but in probably a much less humane fucking fashion. There's another thing. Talk about fucking grocery stores and all that shit. Goddamn factory farming and like that like, you know, that mill, that fucking death mill that exists, that is, you know, these giant crazy meat processing plants. And like, that's hard to reconcile too, right? So like, what is it? Do you want to go out and you want to do it yourself? Take the onus and say, I'm going to remove this animal from the planet because I want to eat it for my own fucking sustenance. And depending on how you look at it, maybe the animal was put here to be eaten by something, whether that be a bobcat, whether that be a fucking wolf, or whether that be a human. Why not you, essentially? And why can't I essentially reconcile those things, right? And take the onus and put yourself in the situation where you're responsible now for that animal's life, and you need to pay respect to the animal in the sense by like consuming it wholly, right? Because I don't know, it's an interesting thought. Like this is now getting way out of it, in the sense that if this animal was put on Earth to essentially be eaten, you are completing its life cycle completely, and you are essentially removing it in the nicest fashion you possibly can, if you do it right and you do it properly. Excuse me. And are you actually doing a service to the animal and the environment and all this stuff by doing that and killing it and not putting a burden on these factory farming scenarios and having to have all this crazy scenarios where you're killing all these animals. Like, think about it. Like, if you went out and killed a deer once a year, you had all this deer to eat, and then maybe you'd go and supplement it with a little bit of beef here and there, just to mix things up, just to make it a little sausage, whatever you want to do. We wouldn't have such a burden on the system. And yeah, maybe if everyone started hunting their own thing, we'd have another fucking problem on our hands where there's no deer. But there's probably not everyone's going to hunt. And there's lots of vegetarian people out there, and that's okay. But if more people start to hunt, at least, we can start to take a little bit of pressure off the rest of the industry. Plus, food security is fucking crazy these days. Like, yes, you have to pay for the gear, and you have to get out there, and you have to drive and get a gun and all this stuff. I'm sure really it's only like a upfront cost, so to speak. You only have to buy one gun. You don't have to buy one thing, as long as you keep good care of your stuff. Like, you don't need to have a bunch of shit all the time. But it's, hopefully, as long as the animal exists, you're going to get it, and then you can squirrel it away as long as you have a little bit of a freezer action. So, again, I can see the thing, and I understand, you're ending a life. And it's interesting because, like, obviously, for some reason, not for some reason, but for the fact that we can build homes and society and talk and think and have opposable thumbs and all these fucking shits, we think we're better than a lot of these animals that are out there. And that's the weird part about it, because I don't think that's necessarily true. I obviously value human life, and I value humans over animals in that sense, because I am one, and I'm a teammate. But what I'm saying is that if we are really equal, and we're part of this animal kingdom, and we're part of this earth, and we're part of this planet, and we're part of the solar system, and the universe, whatever, why do I think that I can just decide to end someone's existence? And maybe that's a narrow-minded view of what existence is, because maybe it really only exists on this plane, and these animals only live for a couple years anyway, so they have a very distorted view of what time is compared to what we are. To what we are. But again, I feel like there's almost an egotism behind it. This is just this is only my personal feeling. It's not a critique on anybody at all. But for me, I feel like I need to enter this realm of, I can do this, I'm allowed to. But the idea should be flipped, that you're part of this world, and again, you're treating the animal with the utmost respect in that sense, where you are. But again, see, I flip-flop to this idea that there's a hubris involved with hunting and being like, I'm going to just go kill this thing because I can. But when you enter into the mindset of, again, you're doing it to help the ecosystem, you're providing a death that the animal would never experience otherwise. Again, you're actually potentially doing a good thing, which is a really, it's a really, really interesting thought. And, God bless everybody, and, everyone who does it, good for them, do your thing. But I think I just need to try it. Like, this other thing, I need to fucking try it. I need to go and actually do it, so I know, because it's an unknown, but I can actually go and figure it out. And then hopefully me and B-Rye can take a trip up to Red Lake and do it up there, because that'd be fucking sick. They have tons of fucking hunting, cool shit, really interesting stuff out there. So the trip's coming. Watch out, Red Lake. Bigmark and B-Rye are coming at you hot. Anyway, I don't know. It's an interesting thought. Let me know in the comments what you think. Start a discussion amongst yourselves. I want to hear what everyone thinks. I want to hear, I know we have listeners all over the world, so let me know what happens in your country too. Like, I don't know. Canada, the Great White North, is very different, maybe a different scenario than your country, but that's what I got to say about that. Anyway, thank you all for listening so much. Hope this sparked some interest, at least, in checking it out and learning a little bit more about hunting and fishing and outdoorsmanship and all that good stuff. Yeah, thank you so much. Check us out. Instagram, Twitter, Bigmark Podcast, Bigmark Pod. DM us that there. If you ever want to reach out in any way, please do. Like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're wherever you're listening, give us a 5-star review. I know it sounds like a bit, but please, we love it. It means a lot to us, but thank you so much. As long as you thought it was 5-star, that is. But again, thank you so much. Please spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell everyone you know. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, check out the other episodes. And again, I want to spread the community. I want to spread knowledge. I want to spread the love. Thank you so much. Have your M&R, or have your fishing license ready for when the M&R comes around. Go get it. It's easy. And have your pets spayed and neutered. I don't know. That's what Bob Barker says. Peace.